thin line of peace, just for a moment. In the region of Western Moti in the turn of the new calendar, power-hungry warlords, roaming bandits, and tragedy were the things this land was known for. How did things get so bad? Weren't these lands supposed to be a part of Oruin, the Kingdom of Light? Well, like most things that are assumed, they are more complicated underneath than what appears on the surface. Let us now discover the reasons why, before the rise of the Western Lakes, conquerors of the West, Western Moti was always plagued by loss of life. Welcome to our telling of a new story of history, known only as Istorina. To fully understand the situation in Western Moti, we must first make sure you understand two concepts: the Ledora Levy and the importance of the Twin Gates. The Twin Gates were two cities once used to protect the core lands from outside threats. They're now seen as the gateway and separator from true Nadan people, Eastern Moti, and the rest of the Nadan, Western Moti. The other thing you must know is the Ledora Levy. It was and still is one of the most infamous and controversial laws ever proclaimed. Enacted somewhere around the 3rd and 4th centuries OC, the exact wording of the levy stating, "As the sun and moon are proclaimed under the realm of Oruin, and Oruin being gifted such blessings from our gods Riv and Yahero, if even the moon and sun are proclaimed ours, then Western Moti is without doubt. With the power gifted from Yahero, I bestow upon you, the people, to proclaim that same protection past the Twin Gates and beneath the Moti Mountains." In short, this proclamation proclaimed everything past the Twin Gates to be a part of the Kingdom of Oruin. To be allowed such a blessing for a great future, a meeting was to be arranged with the Ledora and a group seeking permission. After a small fee was paid and permission granted from the Ledora, they would be given a spot somewhere within Western Moti. Sounds like a good deal for everyone, right? No. This system had many problems with it. Firstly, these fees were no small fees for the common man. Sure, the bureaucrats and rich could arrange this, but for a man simply looking for a brighter future for his family? Getting several years' wages and arranging a meeting with the Ledora was near impossible. So the common people had two options: sign up to travel with the rich in these settlements and either pay a much larger fee or become a borderline slave. Or save your resources, get your friends, family, and loved ones, and go for yourself. There's no question what most people who could did. This settling phenomenon was later dubbed the Sabina Levy, meaning Law of Destiny. Why stay in the overcrowded and corrupt core lands when you could become rich and powerful for yourself out west? This was the dream sold to many, though only a dream. This phenomenon led to land disputes unprecedented in the current history of mankind. Imagine this. Your party of a few hundred has traveled hundreds of miles for a better future west, battling the local population, mirror, and the elements. But you prevailed. Your family settled down and began building a brighter future. After 50 plus years, you're now an old man. A thriving community has not only sprung up, but prospered. You fought off the natives. You fought off the mirror. You have done all this on your own, you and your family. Your children, now adults, barely know the name Oruin or the problems they had. Now imagine this. Since you weren't officially allowed to leave, one day some rich noble asshole from the core lands comes and proclaims this land, your farms, houses, theirs. Now, imagine how hard it would be to not stab that person in the leg. Sadly, many people did not have to imagine this, as this was a common occurrence during the time of the levy, between roughly 300 and 0 OC. Once these nobles, or high class, arrived, they tried bringing the class system they were so accustomed to from the core lands. They had the holy right to be here after all. These lands were handpicked from the Ledora. The low classes, or natural borns, didn't give a shit what some egotistical man said they could have. This was their land, and they'd be damned if some toga-wearing bastard was gonna come up and take it from them. Oruin couldn't help the high class, or better described, didn't want to. This was the purpose of the levy to begin with. Let the people of Oruin settle in its name while they keep all the power and wealth to themselves. They never had any intentions of honoring their vow of protection. It seemed many within the high class did not fully understand this. With everyone left to their own devices, untold bloodshed and tense rivalries prevailed. This problem lessened throughout the centuries with consolidation of land and power, but never enough to claim Ledora, and definitely never enough to fully resolve the issue. Nadan on Nadan bloodshed was not their only problem. The native population, the Muspers, did not take kindly to this invasion of their lands. The Muspers, tribal people who are pretty good at wood carving and were much more technologically inferior to the Nadan people. At first, the tribes began beating back their early settlers, but over time, as more came in and larger and stronger cities began forming, by the time of the 1st century OC, many weaker tribes had either joined together under massive coalitions, were enslaved, or killed. The discrimination of the Muspers got so bad that many wars and conflicts would be fought over past land and later, Musper freedom. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The sappers, as many Nadan called them, were not totally brought to their knees. As mentioned earlier, the joint coalitions, which later formed into minor petty kingdoms, became deciding factors in many conflicts fought between the high class and natural borns, even taking back land and destroying cities from the Nadan people at times. The largest tribe being the Munasa, with an estimate of around 6,000 warriors and hundreds of villages under their control. They were on par with some of the most powerful Nadan kingdoms in western Moti. With the constant infighting between the Nadan kingdoms, Munasa for a time became a leading figure in the geopolitics of the region. With the class divide, slavery, Mera, Muspers, and constant war, all with no help from Oruin, it's no wonder they didn't consider themselves a part of it. Even most of the high class considered themselves more vassals than directly a part of Oruin. A good rule of thumb for this is, the further away you get from Twin Gates, the more cities and minor kingdoms consider themselves independent. The westernmost areas, Pizza-Purveki, did not consider themselves related to Oruin in any which way. They had never even seen or saw armies from them, simply too far for the great kingdom to care. So, with this mindset really sinking in by the 2nd and 1st centuries OC, this created a problem for Oruin. They considered everything past the Twin Gates to be theirs, and demanded yearly tributes accordingly. Eventually, the cities in the Yukhnevich got fed up with this and stopped paying. This would kickstart the first series of tribute wars between Oruin and the Western Kingdoms. The first 3 wars of independence being in 147, 139, and finally 113 OC. Except the war in 139, all others ended with a Oruin victory. This was the first time Oruin would intervene with military force and assert its political dominance in the region. This sufficed for a time, but in 97 OC, what many consider to be the ending point of Oruin's golden age, the kingdom of Oruin would begin to freefall into decline and stagnation. Famine. Famine, accidentally caused by the Ledora, had swept over eastern Moti and would cause nearly 700,000 deaths over the next 70 years, dropping the region's population by a tenth at its conclusion. This brought new problems to our western friends. While eastern Moti starved, Western Moti would thrive. The current standing Ledora at the time, Yukhnevich, looking to solve his food crisis, began investing more time into his western domains. By the year 72 OC, many of the subjugated tribes from the previous wars had long ceased tribute to Oruin. So Oruin began a conquest of the southern kingdoms once again that same year, turning them from occasional allies that rarely paid tribute anyways, into official vassals. They caught many kingdoms off guard, and with quick succession, many began falling to the might of Oruin. Within that same year, close to half of Western Moti had been conquered and vassalized. Despite these victories, Yukhnevich would only be able to hold on to these newfound holdings for another 12 years, at which point the vassals would successfully rebel once again. The point of mentioning this, with a lot of towns having renewed freedom, this caused old rivalries previously buried through consolidation of land to rise up, and within a few years, the entire region would be completely destabilized. Fighting between the different political groups would only intensify in the following years. Before moving towards our climax, I would like to note that these conflicts between the different social classes were not uniform in their division. High-class towns on many occasions would fight alongside natural-born and Muspur armies, and vice versa, even fighting against Oruin during some of the tribute wars. The reason these wars seemed endless and futile was because of Ledorism. There can only be one Ledora in a given known region. The head of Oruin was that Ledora. Any nation who challenged him would be put to the sword, with the full might of Oruin on top of them. With that out of the way, let us move to our conclusion. All this tension, Oruin advancing, high and low class wars, the mass slavery of Muspur people and mixed breeding between the cultures, all came to a head during the Southern Blooded Wars, lasting from 55 to 42 OC, 13 years. It all started with a reformist called Tinian Manuris, born from Nadan father and Muspur mother. He sought to change the outlook on sappers and end the mass slavery of his mother's people. He also had polarizing ideas that resonated deeply with the low-class people of Western Moti. He quickly became quite popular and the face of Muspur rights and freedom. It's not sure how or even by who, but when his wife found his mother dead in his house, he blamed the natural-born cities and led an uprising within their borders. Being well-liked by the low class, this divided their sense of unity down the middle. This quickly sparked and grew into a regional-wide war. High and low-class towns, it didn't matter. By the end of it, almost all of the 164 city-states and 14 out of the 15 Muspur tribes had joined in at some point during the next 13 years. With alliances ever-changing and new players constantly joining in, this war changed the entire political landscape in Miporiati and the Likanok forever. 9 of the 15 major Muspur tribes were either destroyed or incorporated into larger coalitions, the minor kingdom of Munasa, mentioned earlier, being completely wiped. While on the Nadan side, they saw 8 city-states rise to hold 70% of Nadan towns in Western Moti. Tinian and his alliance would be defeated ultimately, failing in his war, but not his cause. Surprisingly, succeeding in his life's goal to change the mindset of Nadan people on Muspurs. During this time, many Nadan and Muspur kingdoms fought side by side, defending their allies and supporting each other like never before seen. Tinian may have died feeling a loser, but was remembered as a defender of Muspurs, and hero among his and many Nadan people. While the Southern Blooded Wars may have seemed all-encompassing, the region of Pazapurveki remained neutral during it. They had noticed the bloodshed going on south of them and were terrified by it. So the 7 major city-states in the region formed an alliance to strengthen their ties economically and militarily. This alliance would hold from 45 OC all the way to 3 OC. There, 3 of the 7 cities would break out into war, completely destroying one of the 7 kingdoms. The alliance still held on, but all parties secretly knew the days of cooperation were over. It would only take a spark to light the gasoline that was now the Pozapoveki region. That spark being the fall of Oruin. Stay tuned, as the Western Lakes video will be continuing the story of the Pozapoveki region and its descent into chaos, and eventually rise into empire. Hey everybody, welcome back to Istorina. This has been a video a long time coming. I've been teasing this video for the better part of 6 months now, so it's about time I get off my ass and I start getting some stuff done. I see we have a lot of new subscribers here. Almost quadruple the amount from last time. Hooray! Thank you guys. I appreciate you. Love you. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe. That shows me that, hey, I'm doing some badass shit. And these guys think it as well. We also have a Discord, so come say hi, chat, and just talk about your worlds, Istorina, and world building in general. You know, check up in the progress in the next video, things like that. So now that this video is done, finally the Western Lakes video can come out. The storyline has already been planned out for a while now, so I am just excited to finally get on this guy and get it done. You know, get it out the way. I also have other little videos planned out, little time lapses, things like that. So if you're interested, you're excited for what the future holds, well, keep your hats on, sir, because there's a win coming. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one.